What happens when your worst fear becomes your reality? Hi, I'm Brent Cassidy. Welcome to the Nightmare Success In and Out podcast, where we explore how to overcome your fears and nightmares and set yourself free. We're going to be exploring this topic with guys I was in Leavenworth with and others who survived their own nightmare. These stories can be inspiring, sometimes sad. There's some humor, but hopefully you can come away with a nugget of something that'll help you knock down some of the prisons you built up in your own mind. All right, welcome back, Nightmare Success In and Out listeners. This is where you come for what happens when your worst fear becomes your reality. How do you adapt, survive, overcome, set yourself free? Folks, don't forget to follow, subscribe, share it out to whomever, like it up, comment, it all helps. So who are we talking to today on Nightmare Success? I'm talking to Andreea Parc, and she has an incredibly interesting story. She can't run for president because she's not from this country, but she might be smart enough to. She was a former attorney in New York and was once the CFO of the New York Taxi King. And if anybody ever followed that, that was kind of a big case. And it involved Donald Trump's personal attorney, Michael Cohen. And she says that one day her world was turned upside down when she was suddenly taken from her office as part of a New York State case involving the unpaid taxes on the NYC yellow cab medallions. Days later, a federal case followed. This time it was for immigration fraud stemming from her general practice. She chose to go to trial. She chose to go to trial in a federal case. That doesn't happen very often. 97% of the people who are indicted plea. The decision led to a 5-year sentence, and she got out of prison. She's written her memoir. It's called Alive Again, my journey from attorney to redemption in prison. She interestingly developed a personal development technique called APPLE: awareness, perspective, presence, letting go, and empowerment. And she uses this to help in supporting attorneys and other high achievers on not getting in the wrong lane, staying in the right lane, and using this technique. I can't wait to unpack all this with Andreea. Before we do, I want to recognize our show sponsor, Auto Plaza Direct. You know, who likes spending a couple of weekends walking car lots, looking for a car. Then you spend 4 or 5 hours in the dealership to buy a car. It's kind of like a root canal appointment. Well, there's a better way to take away all that pain and hassle of getting a car. It's called Auto Plaza Direct. They're your personal car concierge. Just tell them the car you want, what you can pay, and they'll go find that car for you. They'll negotiate your best price. They also offer you warranties and financing. It's all full service. Go to autoplazadirect.com to get started with your personal car concierge, the new hassle-free way, the car buying experience you deserve. Auto Plaza Direct. Tell them Brent from Nightmare Success sent you. Welcome in, Andreea Parc. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have such an interesting story, and I always love to talk to people, Andreea, who come from another country. And I think where you came from was Romania, and how you, and what age were you when you came from Romania to the United States?
I was 22 years old.
23 years old. And how did you decide to make that happen? Because that's a big thing to have happen, is to change countries.
Yes, so that's a question that I've been asked so many times since I ever remember. So I grew up in Romania, being a communist country.
Yes.
And since I've remember, I wanted to live in New York City and be a New Yorker.
And how did you hear, like in Romania, in a communist country, how did you get your information about New York and the United States?
I don't remember. I believe it was from the American movies, but we didn't have that many American movies.
Yeah.
But I think it was that idea that America is the country of all possibilities, where anything is possible. And knowing that in Romania, I had very limited chances to go wild. I believe that that was the where my idea of being a New Yorker stemmed from.
And
So after I,
what
yeah.
was life like for you with your family growing up in Romania? We don't get to talk to many people from Romania. Like what as a kid and your family, how was it?
So my parents were intellectuals, so
Okay.
they had higher education. They had very good positions in Romania, and for them, everything was power and money, and to get to be somebody.
Mhm.
And probably that's the reason why when I graduated law school in Romania, I left, changed the continent completely, and came to the United States with the hope that I will become successful and make my parents proud.
Mm. What did your parents think about you wanting to leave your homeland to come to the United States?
Happy. They were
Okay.
happy that for me, of course, it was hard for them to know that at 22, I'm literally leaving everything behind and changing the continent. But they were happy for me, and they trusted me that I can handle it myself.
And siblings, did you have brothers, sisters? You were only
No,
child.
I'm a sick. Yes.
So the only child was leaving them to come to a new country. So tell us, what was it like getting to the United States?
I felt home the first time I stepped foot in New York,
Mm.
and it's been almost 28 years.
So when you came, did you have people that you knew that you could stay with, or how does that work?
So I was invited, and I came with a tourist visa. I
Okay.
was invited by a distant relative
Okay.
for a vacation to celebrate graduating law school. But the next day I arrived in the US, I met my future husband.
Wow. Okay.
I guess it was meant to be.
Yes.
So we got together. He told me that if I stay with him, he will help me. And yeah, that's what happened. Then we got married, and I got the green card and the citizenship.
So you already had been to law school in Romania. So did you know that that's what you were wanting to do in the United States?
Yes, so I wanted to continue with law, but definitely it's a difference in law from the European law system to the American.
Mhm.
So plus my I thought I know English, but I didn't. So then I took a paralegal course for a year and a half, and that helped me a lot with the legal terminology
Mhm.
and with English. And after that, I registered for the LLM program, which is the equivalency for foreign attorneys, and I was able to sit for the bar.
And
So
then
it's been a process for a few good years while I built I built a business and my family. We had a daughter, and it was yeah, it was hard. It was.
I'm sure it was hard. So you passed the bar. What's the next step with that?
So when I passed the bar, I was already working with the taxi king.
Mm. And how did that
So
come about? Because I mean, for those, there was a whole show about this whole thing with the Taxi King, and you were high up in the deal as the CFO. How in the world did that come about?
so
For those who don't
when
know, for those who don't know, for a long time, and this is before Uber and all that, you couldn't drive a taxi anywhere in New York unless you had this medallion, and you had to pay so much money for the medallion, and then that was your, your roadway, your pathway to be, to have a taxi in New York, which is a pretty good job. I don't know what it is now with Uber and everything, but it was a big deal. And then there was this huge story that came about what was going on with these medallions. But going back, Andrea, how in the world did you get involved with this company?
So I started my business, and I was doing all kinds of translations and legal documents for the Romanian community, and I was working with the Romanian consulate in New York.
Mhm.
But then I've learned that you can make very good money by being a bookkeeper.
Mm.
So a good friend of our family knew an accountant, and here they recommended me, and the accountant indeed needed a bookkeeper, and I started to work for the accountant as a bookkeeper.
Mhm.
So for few good years, I was going to his office, getting boxes and boxes of statements and little books of checks, and coming home and working at night to input the information into QuickBooks and to do the reconciliations for those companies that the accountant handled as a bookkeeper.
Mhm.
And after so many years, probably 5, 6 years, this accountant told me that this person, not knowing that all of these companies that I was working for all were owned by the same person, and this person was Gene Friedman, which was later become the taxi king.
Mhm.
And he said he needs somebody in his office to set up the accounting department because he's all over the place. He doesn't have anything on paper and on the computer. Everything is on paper. And he wants to settle down and to have an accounting department.
Okay.
So this is how I met Gene Friedman. And indeed, I was the one who uh, actually started his accounting department.
Mm. Wow.
And in the same time, so I didn't work for him. Everything was consulting.
Mhm.
I was going to I trained people in the accounting department that were hired by him, so they worked directly for him. But I was there to oversee the accounting department because remember, I knew everything for the past years because I was doing the bookkeeping. And at that point, a medallion was about 250,000.
Right.
And he started to appear in at the TLC Taxi and Limousine Commission auctions and started buying all of the medallions that were on the market. And that raised the price.
Mhm.
And soon enough, the price of one medallion reached over 1.25 million.
Wow.
But it was very short lived because we all know that Uber and Lyft appeared
Mhm.
on the market, and that was when everything collapsed.
Wow. So all this is going on. Are you as personally, or is this a good, are you making good income from this?
It's funny that at the sentencing, the judge was made a comment. I wouldn't say was laughing about me, but made a comment that it's too bad that you didn't even make any money out of this. So I was making a good income, but
Yeah.
I can't say that I was making money because remember, I had my law firm.
Right. I mean,
I
this was
had,
almost like a side hustle for you. The
yeah,
because you had a whole other world with your general practice of and all mostly from what I've read, because you never know what you read is really what it is. A lot of it had to do with your community, immigration, asylum, all those different things. So I'm sure you were very busy with that, and then you're doing uh, this whole thing with the Taxi King. But what's strange about it all, and it's just like fascinating, Andrea, how it all came kind of at once. It all converged. You know, you're taken. First of all, was that a surprise that you were taken from your office by um, whomever this was from the state that does a surprise deal at your office? Was that something that was a surprise, or were you expecting them coming to you and this was all coming to a head?
no, it was a complete surprise
Okay.
because by that time I wasn't working with Jim Friedman anymore.
Okay.
So I knew that he had the issues of not paying the taxes because he didn't have the money to pay anything. He didn't have the money to pay the mortgages. He
Mhm.
didn't pay basically anything. Employees, a lot of people left. And I basically closed all the relationships with him in March. And now this is June.
Mhm.
I'm working in my office, and two people come in and they just tell me, "You're coming with us," handcuff me, and shove me in a car.
Wow.
So I literally thought that I was kidnapped.
So where did you think you were going?
I don't know. But let me, because I know it's um, fascinating for a lot of people and think she's an attorney. How come she didn't see things coming?
Mhm.
I was in such a denial of everything that happened, that was happening. Um, I thought that nothing would touch me, and I was there as a CFO, like that
You were just very confident that whatever you had
child,
yeah,
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 that child that has the sparkly things all around.
yeah.
And that image of success, that title gave me such a confidence that nothing is going to happen to me.
And how old would you have been, Andrea, when all this took place?
43.
Okay. So you had built yourself from 22 to 43 into a professional. You had your law practice. You're doing this with the Taxi King. You've stepped away from it, and then you're handcuffed. What goes through your mind when you realize that? Because this case actually got dismissed because Friedman actually ended up testifying against Michael Cohen, and then but days later, as this is all going down, there's a federal indictment. How does that come about?
So for the state case, I was in Albany for 3 days
Okay.
until my family was able to put down the um, bond,
Bail. Yeah. Bond.
the bail. And I was driving home, and I was calling the office to let them know that I'm on my way and I'll be in the office and before 5. Nobody's answering the call, which is weird.
Mhm.
And finally, probably an hour later, one of my assistants picks up the phone, cell phone, not office phone, cell phone, and tells me that the other assistant was visited 6 o'clock in the morning by federal agents, And it was a massive investigation on my immigration practice. So that's why they left the office, they locked the office. And all of the keys of everybody that worked for me were dropped in the mailbox, and I haven't seen or heard from them ever since.
Wow. You were literally driving back from Albany after being arrested. You're calling the office, and now you find that there is a large federal investigation going into your practice of immigration, asylum. Now, what are you thinking?
That was the point where I completely blocked my, I paralyzed emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
I was so afraid of what could happen that I can't think, I can't take any decisions,
Mm-hmm.
rational decisions, because I took a lot of decisions that were one worse than the other because of the fear of what's going to happen. And the worst happened. So
Yeah.
that's the reason why now I'm working with attorneys and high achieving professionals to unblock them, to help them unblock and unlock them out of that fear. Because in fear, you can't make any straight decisions or good decisions for yourself and for your family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fear causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Um, with all this going on, you've got a whole personal life. Are you still married to your husband and kids? What all happens in your personal life as this is going on over here with the federal situation?
No, I was divorced, but I had a daughter. She was
Mhm.
15 at the time,
Okay.
and a partner. And the thing is that I told everyone not to tell my daughter what happened
Mhm.
and not to tell my mother what happened.
Mother's still in Romania.
Mother is still in Romania,
Okay.
yes. And, when you're trying to hide things, that's when everything comes to light,
Hmm.
you know. And my daughter was having breakfast at home before going to school. And she, knowing that I'm in Romania because my mother had some emergencies, when she sees my picture on the television in front of the entire America.
Mm. Mm. So how did you talk that through with her?
Again, I was so paralyzed with emotional, I was numb.
Yeah. Trauma.
I didn't talk to my daughter at that point at all. I came home like nothing happened.
Okay.
But then when the federal case started to unfold, then I sat down with her and I told her that um, I'm going to trial. That is another thing that, because of that fear and not being rational in my decisions, I didn't educate myself with the choices that I might have if I go to trial.
Hmm.
I had two sets of attorneys, but probably because I was so sure of myself, none of them told me, hey, lady, why don't you sit down and actually look at the reality of the criminal system in this country.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I wasn't guilty. And that's the reason why I chose to go to trial. And I trusted the judicial system, and I trusted that truth will come to light. And I was wrong, because that didn't happen.
So, as everybody who listens to this show knows, not very many people go to trial. Um, what was that experience like for you?
It was unreal, heartbreaking, but somehow I needed that experience to wake me up.
Mm, interesting. Did you feel like, because I always interested when people go to trial, did you feel like that as the trial, and I'm not sure how long the trial lasted, did
Two
you feel
weeks.
2 weeks? Did you feel like in that time period that you had a good shot with this jury and the case, or was it from the jump you felt like, oh no, I've done the wrong thing, I shouldn't be here, I probably should have figured something else out, or did you think there was a shot that you were going to win this thing?
At that point, in my 200% denial,
Mm-hmm.
I thought that I have a great shot. Now, looking back, it was a disaster.
Yeah. Okay.
but, but again, because you can't see the reality when you're with horse glasses
Yeah. Well,
or with pink glasses.
and Andrea, you're talking about something that is such a hot subject right now, with immigration and asylum and all those different things. And I'm sure within your community, being a Romanian, you had a passion for getting people through the immigration process and the asylum process and all those different things that happen. Did you feel like that you were doing something wrong when you were doing the things that you were doing?
So there is no um, smoke without fire.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, I made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But so what happened was I helped a certain ethnicity from Romania
Mm-hmm.
to get asylum in the US because they were persecuted both in Romania and in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I started with two families which were really hardworking and nice people, and they had really great cases. And when those two cases were approved, then it's when a lot of the same ethnicity came to me.
Mm-hmm.
And having so many, because immigration, I wasn't an immigration attorney. I had a general practice. Immigration was about 30%
Mm-hmm.
of my practice. But I had my practice, I had these cases, I had the taxi king. So it was absolutely crazy.
Mm-hmm.
A day in my office was insane.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was they were coming to my office and we were filing the initial filings with the immigration court.
Mm-hmm.
At some point in time, these people started to disappear. So how the asylum works is people enter the country illegally, and they're allowed to file for asylum 1 year of their entry for people who are persecuted in their home countries. And if they go back, they suffer even more persecution. Mm-hmm. Now, there are 2 steps. The first step, when you apply the initial application, and then after that they get work permit, social security, and then they get driver's license in the US. Mm-hmm. And then the second part of the application is where you show up with the client in front of the judge and the government, and they tell their story. Okay. With documents, paperwork, and things like that, and their entire family. So I applied the initial portion, and a lot of these people, after they got their work permits, I couldn't get hold of them. Mm. Yeah. And why I'm saying that I was paralyzed, because as an attorney, all right, let me finish the story and then I go back. Turns out why I couldn't get hold of them, because they obtained their driver's licenses and they left New York. They weren't in New York anymore. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And then some of them were caught with ATM fraud everywhere in the US, and they were arrested by the feds. Now, as you said, everything came in the same time. Mm-hmm. And the feds, of course, they looked at their background. How are these people? Why are these people in this country? And how are these people having a driver's license? How did they get the driver's license? Mm-hmm. And of course, going back, everything came to me. Right. She is their immigration attorney. So they thought that I was the ringleader of the ATM fraud. So they thought that I was bringing them in the US to do the fraud. Mm. Now, that's clearly not the case. The mistakes that I've made, because then the prosecutors asked me, so why didn't you withdraw the cases or amend the applications? Mm-hmm. First of all, as an attorney, I have the right to protect the client. Mm-hmm. I didn't know which clients did the ATM fraud. I couldn't just withdraw the cases. I needed the people to come in and sign the forms so I can file the amendments. I can't just tell the court, listen, this is the story, because then I was not ethical towards my clients. So I simply didn't know, I didn't know how to protect myself and protect the clients. I went and I spoke with an attorney that handles this type of ethical cases for attorneys. Mm-hmm. And he told me, well, you don't know how the court would act or react to this. So maybe why don't you wait to see what happens? Mm-hmm. And I was relieved, because I didn't want to deal with this anyway, because I was afraid.
Put it in a box and forget about it. Right.
Right. You know, that thing when if you don't think about it, maybe it'll just disappears. It will.
Yeah.
It didn't. It didn't. So they came after me, and of course they couldn't find anything on the ATM fraud, mm-hmm. but they had to take me out of the equation anyway. Mm-hmm. And they created this, they thought that all of the applications that I've made, which were over 100,
Mhm.
were fraudulent.
Okay.
So this is how I was indicted with um, immigration fraud, false statements, and then when when I chose to go to trial, they added as a penalty trial
Mhm.
the identity theft, which carries a mandatory 2 year.
So you get through this whole trial. It comes down with the guilty verdict. Um, you get sentenced to a 5-year sentence. What's after all of this? Where's your mind? What are you thinking at this point?
So because I have dual citizenship,
Mm-hmm.
under normal circumstances, I would have just go home, process the information with my family,
Mm-hmm.
and receive a letter in the mail of the date to surrender directly at the camp.
Mm-hmm.
But because I have dual citizenship and the judge doesn't trust me, I'm taken directly to MCC.
Wow.
So I got to process what happened by myself in a cell without a window, on a top bunk, and an open toilet next to my bed.
Wow, Andrea, that's a lot. That's a lot. Well, I want to take a break there because when we get back, I want to discuss how you handled all that and how you adapted to that new world that you never thought that you would be in. Uh, a lot of people don't like how they show up online. Many individuals think there's just no hope when it comes to managing your reputation on Google. There is hope. It's called the Discoverability Company, and they can help you. Whether you're building a reputation from scratch, repairing your search results after a negative news story, Discoverability can also help you how you're portrayed on popular AI services like ChatGPT. To learn more, visit discoverability.co, not .com, .co. They're even launching a do-it-yourself SEO option, a course for individuals who want to take on their search results on their own budget and speed. Listeners of Nightmare Success can take $100 off the DIY SEO course with coupon code Nightmare Success. And Nightmare Success Podcast is sponsored by the White Collar Support Group, the world's first support group devoted to people navigating the white collar criminal justice system. I'm a member of the White Collar Support Group, and I can tell you this is a bunch of people who help each other through the criminal justice journey for free. Whether you're just starting your journey or you've made it through to the other side, this is great space for you. You can join us on Zoom, Mondays, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 4 p.m. Pacific. For more information, go to prisonist.org. That's prisonist.org. So, Andrea, you get immediately remanded to one of the worst places to get remanded to, and you're in a cell thinking about, oh my gosh, what all's just happened? And I'm not just going to be here for a day or two. I've got a 5-year sentence. So, how do you start downloading this and making this into your next step into the world of the unknown?
The first week was unbearable. And I describe that first week in my book at length. Um, I didn't have any money because of my complicated name. They couldn't get it right, and I couldn't. My name wouldn't show up, and my family couldn't put money on my books. Um, I couldn't eat anything, and I was in shock. The first week, I couldn't concentrate. I was trying to read the Bible, but I couldn't concentrate, and it was really, really tough. But my bunkie was a girl, also from Queens, like me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking at night after they locked the cell. And every night she was telling me stories of her life. She was 28. And she told me that prison saved her life because she overdosed twice and 30 of her friends and family passed away because of drugs.
Wow.
And I realized at that moment that I'm fine. I'm alive. My daughter is alive. My parents are good.
Mm-hmm.
And that everything is temporary, that this terrible situation will end at some point.
Mm-hmm. That's a good mindset, especially from where you were sitting. How long did you stay where you were before you went to the federal uh, prison?
I was in MCC for 8 months
Eight
until I
months.
was transferred to Danbury.
8 months. And I'm assuming that's no outside, all inside cell. Um, 8 months is a long time in a place like that, MCC. So you get transferred to Danbury. Walk us through that. How does Andrea get into that world after she spent 8 months in a horrible, horrible place?
I felt so the first message I sent, the first email I sent my family from Danbury was that I'm in a all-inclusive resort. The outside was absolutely amazing, and that saved my soul. The track, the greenery, the trees, the birds, absolutely incredible, incredible.
Well, especially since you'd been locked in for 8 months,
Yeah,
being outside had to be an incredible experience.
yeah. So I remember the first day I was a plus. Remember that we were locked for so many hours. And the transfer happened in a van with handcuffs, shackles, and tied together around the waist with a chain and the lock. And we get to Danbury and they take everything off. We were three girls
Mm-hmm.
that were sent to Danbury, and we were given the bedroll and literally left in the middle of the street. And the officer said, "You just walk up the hill." He left us there in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
I said, "How is that even possible?" He said, "No, you're campers. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't have
Figure it
locked
out.
doors, you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, you can walk home, but it's another 5-year charge, escape charge, but that's besides the point. There is no locked doors in a camp.
Mm-hmm.
So the transition was incredible for me. And I was looking at my skin, I was transparent
Mm-hmm.
because I haven't seen the sun in 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were allowed to go outside on the roof, but probably 3 hours a week, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. And when I arrived at Danbury, everything happened outside. I stayed outside as much as possible.
So what was, because you're doing a 5-year sentence. Did you at that point, walking into a different situation but a better living environment, did you have any particular strategies, Andrea, on how you were going to walk through the next few years? How did you evolve?
Yes, so my strategy starting early in MCC
Mm-hmm.
was how to keep my mind straight.
Mm-hmm.
Because I understood at that point that the mind is everything.
Right.
I can handle anything. if I can handle my mind.
Mm-hmm. Don't lose your mind.
Don't lose your mind, because
Don't become prison Andrea. Stay yourself, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because the body can be imprisoned,
Mm-hmm.
but the mind can't.
Yeah.
We only imprison ourselves.
True.
And I've learned that the hard way, because I could have made different choices before. But we can make better choices because we don't know better.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody does things to harm themselves knowingly.
Right.
So that was the strategy, and that's when I came with Apple, and
Mm-hmm.
I worked one by one, from awareness to changing the perspective to being present to
Letting
letting
go.
go, which letting go is acceptance
Mm-hmm.
and forgiveness, and that was a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and it took me a while to accept what happened, accept myself, accept and forgive
Mm-hmm.
people and forgive myself.
And you talked before we got on, before we started filming. Talked about you had a lot of support visitors that would come see you while you were there. I'm sure that was helpful.
Yeah, yeah. My daughter, my partner, and two good friends were visiting every week,
Mm-hmm.
every week.
Makes a
But
difference.
then the
Pandemic.
pandemic came, and I haven't seen my daughter for 18 months.
What a terrible set of circumstances that would have been. Um, and we talked about this a little bit before we started, and I wasn't in when the pandemic was, but I knew what it was like when they lock you down, take away privileges and those type of things. I'm assuming that that just happened in the pandemic because it was easier to keep everybody in one place or out of a place or whatever they wanted to do to make sure that they were doing this because of the pandemic, made everybody's job easier. How did you handle that time?
It was tough. It was tough for everybody. And it's one thing when you are alone and somehow you can handle yourself. But then when you have 180 women
Yeah.
around you that are all over the place and terrified with the unknown, because literally we didn't know anything what was happening outside,
Right.
it was even tougher. But again, I realized that I can only help myself. Salvation is individual,
Mm-hmm.
and I cannot rely on anybody from the outside
Mm-hmm.
to help me. So I had to help myself. And the only thing that I could have helped myself in there was to keep my mind sane. And I was meditating a lot, reading a lot,
Mm-hmm.
trying to exercise as much as I could in my bunk,
Yeah.
because for a month, we were literally inside
Yeah. Locked down.
dorm.
All the things that you liked on the outside, you weren't able to get to.
No, for a month, we were 50 people in one dorm.
Mm. Mm. I can't imagine. Can't imagine. Um, so everybody has this thing that happens, Andrea, when you start getting close to your out date. Some people it's a year, some people it's 6 months, some people it's 3 months, but there's this some kind of anxiety that happens that whether you wanted to or not, you've gotten used to your routine in prison. And now you're stepping out to the new unknown, which is you being who you are now, stepping back into freedom. How were you planning to step back out? And what were your plans?
So I started, I knew what I'm going to do. So I was working on my coaching programs. I was working on my book
Mm-hmm.
or books because I still have 3 books that are in the works that I started back then. I worked on the Apple. I knew exactly what I'm gonna do,
Okay,
and I
that's
was so eager to be home and start doing things.
mm-hmm.
But I got home and the situation wasn't that good. I wasn't allowed to go out, of course, because I was still in home confinement.
Mm-hmm.
But and I only was in less than 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
and everything changed. I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn how to walk on the street. I was afraid, not necessarily afraid of people, but it was weird to see people in the street, to see people in normal clothes,
Mm-hmm.
to see cars. Although I was the town driver for
Yeah,
Danbury, so
yeah.
I went out so many times, but it was a parallel reality somehow.
Mm-hmm.
It was me in a uniform with a government car
Mm-hmm.
and the rest of the world.
Right.
Now at home, I was part of the world, but I wasn't, I didn't feel part of the world.
Yeah.
I still felt an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to get accustomed to the new, to the life, back to life.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine people that were in for longer.
I think it's one of the most shocking or surprising things about going into prison, thinking everybody, like you were talking, like I was thinking, the excitement of getting out, exciting to have your freedom back, but reentry is really, really tough. There's a it's kind of a weird dynamic too, because you've got 1,000 things going on in your head, and people are looking at you and you're hoping that they're looking at you as, hey, I'm the same person, I'm the same person I always was. But you really have 1,000 things going on, and they're looking at you also. You got to be really happy, you got to be really, oh absolutely I am, but I think you could think I'm crazy of all these 1,000 things I've got going on, that I'm hoping everybody thinks I'm the same person, but I'm hoping that I'm fitting back in. So there's so many things, and it takes a while to get yourself grounded again and feeling normal. It's not something that happens day one. You're happy day one to get out, and then reality sets in. But you did go to work, Andrea. You did start doing stuff. How did that all start happening for you?
Slowly,
Uh-huh.
very slowly. So the first thing I started was going to school for coaching.
Okay.
So that was because I know a lot of things, but I can't do what I know.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't do taxes, I couldn't do law.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that I could have done was translations.
Mm-hmm.
But then I wanted to be a coach, but I didn't know much of how to do that. So I went to school for coaching. And slowly but surely, I started writing, finishing my book, writing on blogs, talking to people, because it was very weird at the beginning when everybody was calling me to share in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sharing it from my now self, but they were expecting me to share it from my then self.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow we weren't on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And writing a blog, that's why I started a blog. And writing a blog was my venting somehow. So
Mm-hmm.
writing, I found writing as a way of releasing a lot of, and my book actually is, it's releasing the pain.
Mm-hmm.
Now the pain that it was in me, it's in the book, and I'm letting the book speak for itself.
Mm-hmm. Alive again, by the way. On,
Yeah,
I'm, I'm,
alive
assu-
again.
I'm assuming people can get that at Amazon and other places. Yeah. Um,
Yes,
so it slowly started happening. You slowly start getting clients to help high achievers, professionals, attorneys,
attorneys.
and that has to feel good, right? To to
It
use your experience, your life experience, to be able to give back and help.
Yes, it does. It does. Especially that I know because I was there. I know how attorneys feel,
Yeah.
the pressure, the
Mm-hmm.
stress, the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's a lot of, the worst thing um, that people can change, but the worst is their image.
Mm,
Because for me, I lived with that image of a successful attorney.
right.
And from that
You
image,
almost
I
saw that
made,
as your identity. I am this
yeah,
successful attorney. People see me as this successful attorney. Yeah.
yes. And from that image, I made all the mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. And
And
I
that's the
I
worst part to change for
I
people.
think that's so tough because we were having this discussion the other night, and I was talking about the time that I had gotten back, and I was with a couple of friends that I had known forever, and I felt so disconnected because I was thinking, oh my gosh, they've gotten so far ahead of me. They're talking about, you know, vacations and doing stuff to their homes and getting another home, and I'm like, gosh, I was so far ahead of my peers at one point. I was like, how in the world am I ever going to fit back in? And it didn't happen all at once. And I left. I was kind of grieving myself from before, my life, my world of what I was, and I started thinking as I was grieving and really depressed kind of after I left that lunch. And this is like, maybe a month or so after I'd gotten out of prison. And I found that the way that what got me out was finding something that I felt like I was making a difference, that I felt like because what was it that made me feel like that when I was the king of the world? I felt like I was making a difference. It's finding that thing again, whatever that thing is that makes you feel like you're able to make an impact, you're able to make a difference, you're able to do something that giving back or whatever that is
Yeah. I
hasn't have
call
anything.
that
And
the
it,
why.
yes, the why, and it doesn't have anything to do with money. Um,
Yeah.
it has to do with your mindset of how you feel about yourself and what you're doing and your why. Yeah. Yeah. So, uh, Andrea, if you think about this whole story, because I find your whole story fascinating from Romania all the way through this to where you are now and putting your life back together and making a difference in what you're doing. What do you think's your biggest takeaway from all of this that you've been through?
That we are exactly where we need to be in life. Because if I would have known better at that point, now I would have been in a different place. But
Mm,
I didn't. So I needed to learn the lesson. And this lesson was the best for me because I'm a very resourceful person. So
mhm,
if I would not have been stuck in prison and forced to work with myself and on myself,
mhm.
I for sure could have find a different way to escape somehow.
Right.
So my higher power, God, universe, knew that this was the only way for me to learn the lesson.
Mm,
And because of that, I'm grateful that because if it wouldn't have been prison, could have been a car accident or a
Sure.
stroke
Yeah.
or something, because the craziness of my life was so out of hand that literally anything could have happened.
Hmm.
So I take this as a blessing, and the thing that needed to happen in my life to put me on the right track.
Wow, that's a deep thought. That's a good takeaway. Everything that's happened to you, you've been able to recalibrate and now readjust to. This is you. You still have your great brain. You know, they haven't taken your mind and brain away from you, the intelligence, and that's the thing. If as long as you don't lose that, you can make everything else happen. And I love, and I love. I just want to go through the Apple again because I think each and everything that you have on that is awareness, perspective, presence, letting go, forgiving yourself, moving forward, empowerment. You got to take the action to get back out there, and I love that. I think it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah.
tell everybody, my clients, my friends, my daughter, everybody, um, we're human,
Hmm.
and everybody in this life got lost in the bushes at some point in time.
Absolutely. It just doesn't become. It
That's
just
not
doesn't become public for
exactly.
everybody, right?
Yeah, no, but if we know how to pull ourselves out of the ditch,
Yes.
back on the road, that's all that matters.
And you got to have a reason to get out of the ditch. And so that's where you get to your why and your reason and how do you get out. Otherwise, you just stay in the ditch. Yeah,
Yeah,
you stay imprisoned in your own mind, and that's you don't want to get institutionalized. And there's a lot of people that get institutionalized on the outside too. Get stuck in a bad job, bad marriage, bad whatever, and you got to get out of that. There's got to be a way, and that's define that why. Um, okay, to get a hold of you, because you also have we need to recognize the book again. That's alive again. That's what something to check out. Your podcast, the name of your podcast, Andrea?
same, alive
Alive
again. So
again.
the book is in English, Spanish, and Romanian. The podcast is alive again, and it's on YouTube and Spotify and Apple.
Okay.
Yes, I have the Apple book and Predict Your Outcomes guidebook, which is also on Amazon. And my everything comes together in my website, which is andreaparc.com.
Perfect. That was a good pitch, Andrea. I love it. You made that easy. And for all of you talking about gratitude and everything else, I want to thank Homestead Financial Home Mortgage. Lets me use this podcast room and all the fancy stuff. And I want to say, hey, there's another book out there too. If you're checking out Andrea's book, check out my book, Nightmare Success. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you've got time, leave me a review on Spotify, Apple, wherever. And if you want to know anything about more of what I'm doing, go to my website, brentcassidy.com. I spell it wrong. I spell it with a TY, not a DY. As I used to say to my people when I was writing my emails back and forth from Leavenworth, stay strong. I'll do the same. Andrea, thanks so much for stuff. I think you're just a fascinating person. I'm so glad that we got to connect.
Thank you. Thank you. Same here.
Nightmare Success, in and out.